Yes, so everyone that knows me, so I'm Bhante Cunda. So this will be my 7th time back here in VSV and New Ray Buddhist Monastery. So it's great and really glad to see every new face again. And there's also some new faces. The Buddhist Society of Victoria has been, I think, how many years? Is it 70 years? 70 years. Wow, 70 years. And it's great to see how it's grown from this center to a monastery. Now we have bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, and finally a retreat center. So it's great, yeah. So everything is completed. It's just things will be done by part. But it's great that we have a city center here to basically teach the Dhamma. And we have a monks monastery and a nuns monastery and a retreat center. And that is basically this fourfold community where the monastic and the who practice, monks and nuns, and also the bhikkhu, the lay people, able to come also in practice together. Because sometimes when we listen to the teaching, it's great to listen, and we keep the precept. But the most important thing is to practice samadhi and mindfulness, because that will complete the Eightfold Path. Because we can listen to the teaching, get a lot of ideas, keep the precept, and purify the mind, avoid doing what is harmful, and cultivate goodness in one's heart. But the most important thing is to develop the calm, and the peace, and the happiness and joy in one's heart. Because in the world there is so much business, the mind can be pulled out into the world through wanting and not wanting, and it tends to build the sense of self. And if that's too strong, then it can lead to a lot of wanting and the uncontrollable state of mind that is flowing out to the world all the time. But if we develop mindfulness and samadhi and look inside in our heart and mind, then we'll find happiness, peace and freedom, and we'll purify the heart. The more we purify the heart, the happier we become, the more we can keep the precept, and the more wisdom will grow in one's heart. So basically, sila, samadhi, and panya. So virtue, cultivating the mind and the heart through meditation, and that leads to wisdom. So wisdom is seeing things more clearly, how things are hurtful and harmful, and developing wisdom that leads to one's happiness and happiness for everyone else that we live in the community. So those levels or those cultivation of sila samadhi will grow in one's heart and will strengthen and foster one another. That's why having a retreat center is so important for our supporters and practitioners able to come and then have a quiet place and a safe place to practice and develop the heart and the mind and especially the wisdom, because that leads us our suffering into more and more happiness and more higher happiness. So I'm so glad that as soon as I heard that the retreat center is completed, I said, wow, that's great. Now we have a place for our lay practitioner to come and practice. But Yana Grove Retreat Center in Perth is full all the time. As soon as there's a retreat available online, it's fully booked within 1 minute. So having another retreat center give the opportunity for people in the eastern state, especially Victoria, BS Buddhist Society of Victoria, to basically have a place to practice, a quiet, a peaceful, and a place of tranquility. Because the heart and the mind needs a good environment to develop calm, peace, and wisdom. So I'm so glad to be back here and able to support this community again. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you very much. We've actually been traveling quite a bit and teaching retreats in different places. So this also came to be because we will be doing a weekend retreat at SOS for the first time for us. I know there were a few retreats before. And for one of the retreats that we did in Penang in Malaysia recently, I chose a title. Usually I try to choose a title and then gather some ideas around that title. And the title was In the Footsteps of the Buddha, because we were on a pilgrimage. I know Ajahn Nisarano gave a talk about pilgrimage here, so I started to compile some suttas about the Buddha's life, and then I got stuck in the beginning with the first kind of sutta. I mean, not the sutta about his birth so much, but about his life as a layperson and his motivation, why he actually went on the noble search. And then I got back to the topic of death, old age, sickness. And that's what I was talking about when I was here last time and the time before. So somehow that seems to be a topic that is relevant at the moment. So I have brought some slides and have brought a sutta. If we could have that, then I can actually go through it. And the idea is that we go through it and Bhante Cunda and myself can comment as we go along. And you will see why that actually fits in with what I said before. So it's a beautiful sutta. I really enjoy suttas that have like a causal chain, which show you how things are dependent on each other. And this one is the Tayodhamma Sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya 1076. And it talks about 3 things, and then another 3 things, and then another 3 things. And we end up with 30 things altogether, because it's the tens. But it starts with, hang on, how do I do this? I swipe? Yes. Okay. It goes goes like this. Monastics, practitioners, if these 3 things were not found in the world, the realized one, the perfected one, the fully awakened Buddha would not arise in this world. And the teaching and training proclaimed by the realized one would not shine in the world. What? 3? That was a bit silly. I already gave it away. What are those 3? Not what we would think, probably, but those 3 are birth, old age, and death. But because these 3 things are found, the realized one, the perfected one, the fully awakened Buddha arises in this world, and the teaching and the training proclaimed by the realized one shines in this world. So sometimes we kind of wash over this first one of old age, death, and rebirth. Ajahn Sujato translates it as rebirth, because in the context of Buddhism, every birth is rebirth, because there was something before. And there is more conditioning that goes in, more, craving and attachment and delusion, and then there is another birth. And that makes a huge difference. So when we reflect on this a little bit more deeply, if these 3 things weren't there, we wouldn't need a Buddha. We would be fine. There wouldn't be a problem. And that's the stuff we don't really want to think about, isn't it? And then also when we go to the Buddha to be's life, Siddhartha Gautama, that's what he reflected upon. That's what Vipassi, previous Buddha, reflected upon, where we had, the 4 signs, the 4 heavenly messengers, which showed Vipassi, the Buddha Vipassi back then. That's kind of the story that we often use as a legend for the Buddha, but actually it happened to a previous Buddha. But this reflection on people getting old, on people getting sick, on people dying is very, very important. So we see it on the outside, we reflect on it, we realize it's actually something which applies to us as well. And then the important thing, there isn't just those 3 heavenly messengers that come. So it's funny though, isn't it, that we call them heavenly messengers, because they're not pleasant, they're not nice to think about, because we are not used to think and reflect upon them. But then there is number 4, And number 4 is the ascetic, is the samana, is the person who has renounced, who is leaving this world, and who is transcending birth, rebirth, old age, death, and sickness. So it's very, very important, very, very relevant. So it is something for us to not be afraid of. And the other thing that the Buddha says, it's very important to understand, because if we don't understand, what happens then? Then we become intoxicated. We become intoxicated with health. We become intoxicated with life. And we become intoxicated with, what is it? Hang on. Old age, sickness and death. Anyway, I can't remember now. The 3 things which are the opposite of it. Okay, so that's where the problem lies and where we have to attend with our minds. But this sutta goes in a slightly different direction. It always has 3 things that these things are dependent on. So, this problem of rebirth, of old age, and of death comes to be and can't be given up if there is 3 things present. And those 3 things are greed, hate, and delusion. I'll just go through them in the first round, and then we can have a little bit more of a look at them later. Without giving up 3 things, you can't give up. You are incapable of abandoning greed, hate, and delusion. What 3? Substantialist view, that's the translation of Ajahn Sujato there. Doubt and misapprehension of precepts and observances. So that's number 3. Without giving up 3 things, you can't give up. You are incapable of abandoning substantialist view, doubt, and misapprehension of precepts and observances. What 3? Irrational application of the mind. The wrong way to use this beautiful mind we have. And if we do that, then we are following the wrong path. We are investing in things that are not worth investing in. And we have mental sluggishness. Without giving up 3 things, you can't give up. You are incapable of abandoning irrational application of mind, following a wrong path, and mental sluggishness. What 3? Unmindfulness, lack of situational awareness, Ajahn Sujato calls it here. I have different translations as we go along. And a scattered mind. Without giving up 3 things, you can't give up. You are incapable of abandoning that unmindfulness, that lack of situational awareness, and a scattered mind. So it's always 3 things that are dependent on another 3 things. And we start with the big problem of birth, old age, and death. What 3? Because we have the other 3 from before, they are dependent on restlessness. They're dependent on lack of restraint and on unethical conduct, on basically not keeping sila, not understanding sila. Virtue. Without giving up 3 things you can't give up. You are incapable of abandoning restlessness, lack of restraint, and unethical conduct. What 3? Faithlessness, uncharitability, and laziness. So we don't have saddha, we don't have dana, and we are lazy. Without giving up 3 things you can't give up. You are incapable of abandoning faithlessness, uncharitableness, and laziness. What 3? not wanting to see the noble ones, not wanting to hear the teachings of the noble ones, and a fault-finding mind. You might have heard Ajahn Brahm use that word quite a bit, and that's one of the places where it actually appears in the suttas. I put a little star there. I'll maybe explain that a little bit later, but Ajahn Brahmali has looked at this sutta and has done a little bit of comparative studies and found that in other traditions that sequence is slightly different. And he always was scratching his head and going like, why? This doesn't quite match. So this factor is in a different place in the Pali canon than it is in the other canons that we have access to. And this is the one that makes more sense. So that's why I've actually adjusted and shifted it to that place. But you will see it if we go through it in the other order, how it makes more sense. And now, this fault-finding and not wanting to see the noble ones, without giving up three things you can't give up, are incapable of abandoning, not wanting to see the noble ones, not wanting to hear the teachings of the noble ones, and a fault-finding mind. How do we give that up? By not having disregard, by not being hard to admonish, and having bad friends. Without giving up three things you can't give up, are incapable of abandoning, disregard, being hard to admonish, and having bad friends. What three? Lack of conscience, imprudence, and negligence. So we've gone through this causal chain now from number 1 to 10, and now the Buddha is going to go from 10 to 1. And that is the more kind of intuitive way of starting, because he just dug deep and said, this is the root of this, this is the root of this, this is the root of this, this is the root of this. And now we're at the point where we can say, okay, if this is established, then we can start to practice in the right way, and then we have the causes and conditions that will lead to the things that will solve the problem of rebirth, old age, and death. And that's where the circle closes. Because when the Buddha was thinking about these things, reflecting on these things, I sometimes call it a little bit like a midlife crisis. So he realized there is a problem. He realized the world is going in the wrong direction. He realized if I apply, myself and my thinking, which is basically colored with old age, sickness, and death, to old age, sickness, and death, I can't solve the problem. And he realized when there is intoxication with health, with beauty, with life, with wanting to be, then we can't escape. And one of the things he says with this intoxication, because we are intoxicated, we misbehave. We have negligence. We don't understand what is going on. So that is the problem when we are young, when we are healthy, when we are beautiful, when we are, it's like having a new car or having a new piece of clothing or whatever. You get carried away by the newness of it. And because it's so new, you get intoxicated by that. And the intoxication basically robs you of your mindfulness, robs you of your understanding of what is going on, robs you of knowing that it's not just all fun and games. It's okay to have a bit of fun and games when they do arise, but if we get attached to them, if we get intoxicated by them, then we become negligent. So that's where it all starts. So Ajahn Brahm translates this slightly differently. So now we approach it from this end and with Ajahn Brahm's translation. Monastics, practitioners, someone who is morally shameless, morally reckless, is heedless. So we now just chanted the precepts together before. And number 5 is the precepts where we start to, take alcohol, we start to take drugs. They intoxicate the mind, and we become heedless. We become negligent. And because of that, we break all the precepts. And because of, or all the precepts that come before are much, much more likely to be broken because you basically lost it. You don't have any perspective. You think you're Superman, and soon you find out you're not. So that's how it all starts. But also, Hiri and Ottappa in the suttas are often described as the guardian of the world. And it's very important to understand that. Sometimes they are translated in a way that is a bit kind of fear-inducing. Okay, it's important to understand that there is consequences of our actions. Like I said, if you feel like Superman, you do silly things. If you're intoxicated, you do silly things, and you will regret them later down the path. That's one way you can reflect upon this. But another way, once we have practiced for a while, once we have a bit of an understanding, and that's what we talked about yesterday during the meditation day, when you start to understand what the mind is, how the mind operates, how the mind feels, and what a dark mind is, what a deluded mind is, what a pure mind is, what a clear mind is, then you understand that that is something worth developing, and that it is important, and that you want to protect it, and that you don't want to spoil it, that you don't want to defile it. I very often compare it to our clothing. So when we, put on our clothes and we go to a restaurant and we put food all over our clothes, we don't really feel so good about it, don't we? We kind of feel embarrassed, and we want to clean up the spots that are on our clothing because we don't want to be seen that way out in the world. So we have some kind of shame. But now that applies to ethics, that applies to morality. So once we understand what a pure mind is like, and then it starts to become defiled, then we'd want to clean it up as soon as possible. And if we would see each other's minds, I think we would take care of our minds much more, like we take care of our clothes. We would wash them. We would make them nice and clean again. So the understanding of what purity is about, to protect it and to clean it up when it happens, is basically what Hiri is. So once we understand it in this way, it's not something kind of so bad. It's just the common sense thing to do, to clean up the mess. Sometimes what happens is, we are in a low mind state and we kind of misbehave, and then something kind of darkens our mind. But for some strange reason, we think, oh, we've blew it. Now we can blow it even more. Now it doesn't even matter. It's already dirty, put some more ketchup on, But it's actually such a silly response, isn't it? So if we would realize that there is some purity, but that it takes a little bit of, effort, a little bit of application of mind to clean the mess up, but it feels really good to have nice, freshly washed clothes that are clean and that smell nice. Virtue is often described as fragrance. And then the other part, Ottappa, is where we have an understanding of the consequences. And that goes maybe a little bit more into that other area where we understand that if I do things that are not so nice, unskillful, unhelpful, then I harm other people, but I harm myself in the process. I make my life more difficult. Maybe not right now, it kind of feels goodish, but down the track, there is trouble waiting. And if we understand that, if we understand the danger, then we can find an escape. Then we can find another way of dealing with these kind of things. So Hiri, Ottappa are very important. And then also we are heedful and not heedless. And that's what the Buddha basically told us before he passed away. It's the same word, pamada, pamadena. So that's how it all starts out. Anyway, do you want to comment on anything at this stage, or shall I go through all 10?
No, that's good.
Carry on. Okay. So once that is established, once that it is an understanding, and we want to protect that purity, then when you are, okay, I'm already doing the positive part, but when you are heedless, then you can't give up, you can't abandon disrespect, you can't abandon being difficult to be corrected, and you can't give up being with bad friends. So now, if we take care of our own heart and of our own purity, we will start to see and understand that purity in other beings as well. And one way of protecting ourselves is to respect the beauty and the purity in other people, and to listen to them when they have something to say. So when they see a blemish, when they tell you you've got some ketchup on your shirt, or you've got some porridge hanging out of your mouth, we say thank you very much and we clean it up. We don't get angry with them and tell them, who are you to tell me I have porridge hanging out of my mouth? Because we understand it's actually beautiful to develop purity of heart and to see it in other people. And that's when we start hanging out with Kalyana Mittas, with good people, with pure people, because that's what we aspire to in life. So because we have Hiryanotapa, because we have Pamada, then we respect, then we listen, we are suvacha, we are easy to correct, as it says in the Metta Sutta. We're easy to talk to, we're easy to take on advice, and we hang out with the right people. Because the purity of other people will rub off on us. The impurity of other people will rub off on us too. That's just how it works. That's how conditioning works. That's how influence works. Other people have influence over us, and we have influence over them. And once that is established, then now it makes sense how Ajahn Brahmali says it. When you've got bad friends, then you can't give up, and you don't want to abandon a lack of desire to see the noble ones, to see the pure ones, to see the ones who are progressing on this path. You have a lack of desire to hear the teachings, to hear the Dhamma, and when you do hear it, you have a mind which is bent on criticism. So even if you hear something which is helpful, which is skillful, which is beneficial, you have this fault-finding mind that finds fault with the person. And no one apart from the Buddha is perfect. And even people came and saw the Buddha and didn't think he was perfect. They had a fault-finding mind and they found something. And that's the important part we have to learn on the spiritual path. To disregard the things that are not helpful and to focus on the things that are helpful, that are actually bringing us some progress on this beautiful path. So again, we look out for the purity, and if there is some little blemishes sometimes, then we can actually ignore those and focus much more on what is beautiful and what is admirable and what actually is worthy of respect. And if we do that, that will grow in that other person, and that will grow in us at the same time. So that's, as I said, Ajahn Brahmali suggests an earlier or later appearance of this triplet in the ascending and descending sequence based on comparative sutta study. And this is actually in line with the gradual path, for example, with the Eightfold Path as well. That's usually what comes in the beginning, the arising of a Buddha in this world, the arising of the teachings, and then the arising of people who understand the teachings. So once that is there, then we can start to connect with that and progress on the path. So, but when you are immoral, you can't give up. You are incapable of abandoning lack of faith, stinginess, and laziness. So if we have good examples, if we have a teaching that inspires us, then we can have faith. And Saddha, faith, has many, many different layers. But it starts with seeing something good, seeing something that we value and wanting to develop that in ourselves. Starting to realize that these beings were able to fulfill their potential. I have the same potential, so if I work on this, I can also progress on this path. And we are not stingy. We are not trying to accumulate things and get things, but we are willing to give. We are willing to be generous. And then the path can start to develop by having faith and by abandoning things, letting go of things, and letting go of laziness, and taking kind of the easy path of intoxicating ourselves, deluding ourselves, because that can kind of feel comfortable, but it doesn't lead onwards on the path. Because when you are lazy, you can't give up. You are incapable of abandoning restlessness, abandoning lack of restraint, and abandoning unethical conduct. So sila, virtue, the high road, is a little bit more difficult than the low road. But it is worth it to walk on that road. It's worth it to restrain, to move away from the things that we start to understand are not helping our purity, are not helping the skillfulness in our own hearts and in our own minds to develop, and are making us restless. One of the things we don't realize with the things that are pleasant and that we run after, that we are basically chased around by them. And it's a restlessness that never ends. We get some satisfaction, but once we have that satisfaction, it basically feeds this desire to want to have more and more and more. And what does that lead to? It leads to running around non-stop. And then when we stop for a little while, it feels so bad that we don't know how to handle it, and we just, okay, let's carry on running. There used to be this beautiful sign outside Ajahn Buddhaja's monastery. So he had a retreat center where people would go, and where it is very quiet, and where you are trying to let go of the world, and you sit quietly, but sometimes all that stuff that has happened in the past just comes up and you can't handle it, and you want to run away. So as you were leaving the monastery, there was a big sign, not for the people coming, but for the people going out. And the sign said, "You can run, but you can't hide." And the thing is, while we are running, we are kind of hiding. But as we stop running, then we start to actually feel and understand the impurities in our own hearts. And then we have to face them. Then we have to understand them. Then we have to let go of them and turn towards things that are beautiful, that are sustaining. So when you are unethical, that behavior will catch up with you. And then you are muddle-minded. That's the word Ajahn Brahm likes to use, the translation that he has from somewhere else. You lack wisdom, you don't know what you're doing, and you have mental distraction. So all those things rob us of our clarity, rob us of our peace. But it takes patience. So you read the sign, you stop running, you turn around, you go back to the retreat center, and you accept, you understand, you practice, and then eventually you let go, You let those things settle, you let those things go into the background. Mindfulness starts to be established, energy starts to be there, and then you have access to wisdom. And once wisdom arises, you realize that running after all these things is not so much fun in the first place, because you have something else which is much more fulfilling. So you stop running. Even though you sit down, sometimes you still run, isn't it? We had like the retreat day yesterday. And for some people it works, they drop things and they become really peaceful. But others, they were running so much and they come here and they sit down and you can't see them, moving or going anywhere, but the mind is still running. And the tiredness is still there. And then dullness arises and all the other kind of defilements just have to play out. So we have to calm everything down. We have to settle anything. We have to still it. And then the energies start to come back. When you are mentally distracted, you can't give up. You're incapable of abandoning careless attention or wise attention. Yoniso manasikara. So the mind, the work of the mind which goes to the source, which is brave, which turns around and has a close look inside, sees the problem, and eventually takes care of the root problem, is very, very important. But if we don't have the energy, if we don't have the stability of mind, if we don't have the patience, if we don't have the acceptance, if we don't have the beautiful qualities of mind which can be with difficulty, understand difficulty, then we follow the wrong path. Then we are lost. And then we are mentally sluggish. And we just kind of go into sleep. Which is better than going out there and misbehaving. Fine. But that will slowly wear out as we practice. When you are mentally sluggish, you can't give up. You're incapable of abandoning the view of a permanent essence. So once the mind can be turned around, can look inside, can look deeply, can look with stability, can look with balance, can look with understanding, then we can start to gain insight. Then we can start to not have any doubt anymore. So we have saddha, we have faith in the beginning, we trust that other people can do it, we have the potential to do it as well, and then the faith becomes confidence. It becomes confirmed confidence. We know. We don't need anyone else telling us. It's nice if someone else tells us and we say, yep, I have the same experience. It's true. I don't just believe it, I know it. That's when doubt disappears. And then we also understand that rites and rituals are important, yes. But why are they important? Because they purify the mind. That's their work. If we just do rites and rituals and we don't know why we are doing them, then they don't work, basically. That was, the Buddha's criticism for some of the Brahmins back in his time, where he said, if you go and wash in the river Ganges, and if you do this and if you do that, if that doesn't purify your mind, it's a bit of a waste of time. I mean, again, you could be doing much worse things out there, but it doesn't actually do the job. So if the practices we do have a result and do the job, great. But we understand it's not the practice itself. It's the result of that practice which is important. And once the result has been achieved, then we don't need the tool anymore. So you have a problem in your washing machine, you find out what the problem is, you get the right tool. If you get the wrong tool, you can't fix the problem. You get the right tool, you fix the problem, and then you don't need the tool anymore because you fixed the problem. So don't just, or you find out what is usually called. They have these codes, like error codes. You go and read the manual, fine, okay. But now, if you don't do something to fix your washing machine, it's okay if you know the manual, but it's not going to fix your washing machine, isn't it? Okay, and then from that, these are now very deep states that we're talking about, so I'm trying to break them down and make them easy to understand. When that is achieved, when your doubts have been given up, then wanting, ill will, and delusion can be overcome. So the number 8, if that is fully complete, then the person is a stream enter. That's the first 3 fetters that are abandoned, that are let you go of, that are understood and completely eradicated at that stage. And then the person progresses through this beautiful path and comes to number 9, which makes them either a once returner, when these wanting, ill will, and delusion are lessened, and then a non-returner, and once they are overcome completely, then they become an arahant. When wanting, ill will, and delusion is completely given up and replaced by the Brahma Viharas, basically, then we are at the end of the path. Then birth, rebirth, old age, and death is ended. Why is it ended? If we don't get reborn, we can't get sick. We can't get old. We can't die. We can't beat our chests and, be distraught because there is old age, sickness, and death. So that is the ultimate solution of this path. So this has taken us through the whole beautiful path. Now I just have it in Pali for some people that want to see the Pali terms there. So moral shamelessness, moral recklessness, and heedlessness, they lead to disrespect. Respect is such an important quality. Respect towards ourselves, respect to other people. Then listening to people if they have good advice. If they just, want to criticize you, fine. But if they actually have some good advice, or even if there is a kernel of truth in their criticism, just take it back quietly, reflect upon it. And if you find a spot on your shirt, then you don't have to go and thank them, but just say thank you internally and clean it up. And then hang out with the right people. Then next one, have a desire to hang out with good people. Have a desire to hear the teachings, which are there to lead you in the right direction, to make sure that you avoid what is unskillful, that you develop what is skillful, and that you purify your mind. And then you can let go of criticism. And that will lead to faith, that will lead to generosity. And once you start to practice this path, hopefully some people experienced that yesterday when we started meditating, if you manage to let go of the sense of self. The sense of self is the thing which is stingy, is the thing which wants to have stuff, which wants to possess our own bodies, which wants to possess our own minds and tell the body and tell the mind what to do. But if you're generous, if you're kind, if you're compassionate towards your own body and towards your own mind, the energies start to flow inwards, the energy starts to build, and then you are wakeful rather than lazy. You have access to energy, you're energetic. Then restlessness becomes less and less because you've kept the precepts, because you're doing the right thing, because you are restraining, because you are moral and purifying your mind. Then the mindfulness becomes strong. So instead of having weak mindfulness, you have strong mindfulness. You are able to have access to wisdom and understanding. You don't have too many mental distractions because you can settle and stay with one object for a long period of time. And then your attention becomes strong and solid, and you start to understand the path. you again have more and more energy. The meditative path is a happy path, is a high energy, high minds path, and that will eventually lead to right view, will lead to confidence, and will also lead to understanding what needs to be practiced and how it needs to be practiced. You can give up, abandon wanting, ill will, and delusion, and that will lead to not being reborn, not becoming old, and not having to die. Anyway, that's that sequence there. I think there it is again, but maybe we leave it at that for now. Time has progressed. Sorry, Bhante Cunda. But please, anything you wish to add, and then you can maybe take some of the questions and I'll help. Is that good?
Yes. So the Eightfold Path is quite important. If we don't train our mind towards peace, happiness, and letting go, the mind can be consumed by the defilements of wanting too much and also not wanting. So you look at society these days, especially in very developed worlds, there is so much choices, there's so much wanting. It's like people that when they're born, they have a mobile phone before they even walk or go to school. So these are conditioning the mind to have more choices, more wanting, more desire. So the craving is becoming stronger and stronger in human beings. And the more they want, then the world can be quite confusing. People's heart is tainted by defilements and ill will, and it feeds a sense of self. So these days, young people are basically conditioned by attachment. So it's good that we have this Buddhist society where the youth can be here and conditioned by all those wholesome qualities of sila, samadhi, and wisdom. So they grow in wisdom in their heart and mind. But the world is very smart. Defilements is very sneaky in the world because the promise of more wanting is going to bring us more happiness. But you look at some places in the world, the more people have, the harder they work, and the more choices they have, to the point where people are not interested in getting married, and they're just working morning, afternoon, and evening, and some don't even want to have kids because they find that, oh, that will take away my my freedom. Yeah. So yeah, and it leads to like anxiety, worry, and stress is getting worse. As anxiety and stress are getting worse, and people are getting sicker quite often, and even getting sicker even earlier. But I listened to one of the BBC News and say that people that was never meant to have cancer are getting cancer in their 40s, even in their 20s, because their mind is just overcome with anxiety, worry, and attachment, and too much wanting. So it's quite interesting because when we go and stay in the monastery, in the nature, it's just so much peace and freedom. And your mind becomes very light and soft and at ease. Then when you come to like a busy place and we go traveling from the airport to another country, to a city, we realize going through the shops and see people that's just like the noise, the advertising, and just people rushing around, and it's like the five senses. It's just really getting consumed by the outside world, and sometimes you realize, wow, there is a lot of confusion, and if we're not careful, the mind go into the world into more wanting, and if there's too much wanting, there's no peace. So that's why it's so important for Buddhist practitioner or any spiritual practicer to develop the mind. So when we develop the mind in sila, samadhi, and wisdom, the more we let go, the more we understand what is bringing us out into the world, into the attachment, to the never-ending wanting, because all this wanting and attachment will lead to not having peace and not finding anywhere for the mind to rest. Because being mindful is knowing what is happening now when we walk, when we speak to our friends, when we eat, when we smell, when we enjoy things. And when we sit down here, we are more present and more mindful of the body and in the surrounding. Because not being mindful is looking at the past and the future, or basically spending hours with the smartphone, because these are just bringing more defilements. So the practice of basically calming and purifying the mind is so important. The more we let go of our attachment, and just basically, it's true, we all need to work, we all need to eat, and we have to do things and take care of our family. But sometimes when it's excess, then we have become a slave to the defilements. So time to time, it's good to basically just ground ourselves in this present moment awareness and develop peace, and also peace, happiness, and letting go. Not from the world, but to find that inner happiness and peace in the mind. That's why when we develop the mind, when we purify the mind, then we see that all this attachment that brings us out to the world into more confusion and more anxiety and worry. So when we purify the mind, we realize all we need is this body and this mind, and we live quite simply, then you'll be happy. So purifying the mind is very important. The more we purify the mind, the more happier we are, the more calm we become, and the more peaceful, then the more happier we become. Because developing the heart and the mind is very precious. So the more we understand what is happening internally, then the more we see things more clearly. So that's why listening to the teaching is quite important. Because when we listen, we understand what's happening. And also when we memorize the teaching and when we reflect on the teaching, it brings us more happiness and more peace. And the more we come to this, bring awareness to the body and come back to the mind, because the mind is something that's very subtle. We can look at the mirror, we can wash our faces, we can make ourselves beautiful then before we go out. But if we're not careful, we become very obsessed of looking for the external happiness, beauty. But with meditation, it's like looking inwards. When you close your eye, it's like looking into one's heart and mind. Because looking in the mirror, it looks externally, but when we close our eye, we're actually looking in the mirror within the mind. So what we see inside is a reflection on our emotion and our thoughts and our mind. Our mind is actually tainted by defilements. So it can be quite, when we do look inside through the mind, the reflection of our mind, we can see there is a lot of darkness, a lot of confusion, a lot of restlessness. But if we develop the Brahma Viharas of loving kindness, compassion, of generosity, and seeing the goods in other people, and also equanimity within the heart. So when we do sit down and meditate, it's like we're looking deep into our heart and deep into our mind. So it's like internal looking, not through the mirror, but through the reflection of the inner happiness. So that's what we develop as Buddhists and practitioners, and brighten the mind, bring out those energy of happiness and joy. So the mind becomes pure, bright, and radiant. So once we develop that inner happiness, then when the mind is shining brightly and happier, then we can go anywhere, and we bring that happiness no matter where we go. As we get older, as we go to the next life, we develop those wholesome qualities. So we'll open up for any questions.
That's right. You usually go back and forth, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante, for sharing the sutra and the wisdom. So we open the question to the floor. Any question, feel free to raise your hand. Okay. We might start from online question.
Sure.
So this question just came at the start of the talk. The question is, sometimes I'm completely overwhelmed by negative thoughts.
Yes.
and they keep repeating in my mind and take long time to overcome them.
Yes.
What should I do to let go of those thoughts quickly?
Yeah. I mean, one of the problems is that we want them to stop quickly. The first step is always acceptance. The first step is always understanding what's actually going on. And then we have to make sure that we find a safe place to interact with them, to understand them, to calm them down, to settle them. And then there is many different ways that the Buddha has given us to deal with different types of thoughts. So I'm not quite sure what is happening for you there. So sometimes it is helpful to have the mind go to something else, go to another object that can replace that kind of looping thought, especially if it's quite strong and overwhelming and we don't have enough kind of stability to see it clearly, to understand it. So we try to find something wholesome, we try to find something uplifting, we try to find something inspirational that can kind of counteract this darkness that starts to arise. So it's like with the fault-finding mind that we described before. One of the problems is, yes, there is darkness in that one corner of the mind. But as we look into that corner and we get sucked in by that corner, all we can see is darkness. And we get lost and we get overwhelmed in that darkness. But if we have the ability to somehow, that's what you will have to experiment with and find out how you can do that, to turn around, to look at the rest of your mind, to look at the rest of your life, to look at the rest of, whatever it is, and then to see that beauty, to see that brightness, to see that purity, and to disregard that little corner for a moment in time. And then as you have purified and energized the mind by looking at something which is wholesome, which is inspirational, which brings up energy, which gives you stability, which gives you clarity, then you can start and look back and you see that little corner in perspective. You have an ability to understand how you can start to clean up that mess which is present there. So we just have to make sure that we are skillful with these kind of things. So even if you're in the restaurant, as I was saying, and you get a little spot on your t-shirt, if we just focus on that and we don't understand what else is there, we can really kind of get overwhelmed by that. And maybe with this simile, if that is possible, and you spoil your shirt, just put on your jacket for the time being. Go home, and then when you're home, then you can wash your shirt. Because sometimes you can't apply what you need to apply right away. And your mind is overwhelmed, your mind is destabilized, your mind is just sucked into this one kind of problem that becomes everything you can see. So try some of those skillful means that I described here. Sorry, because I don't know exactly what you are dealing with. It's a bit hard, but the Buddha has given many different examples of different states that the mind can be in, and we have certain antidotes that help to alleviate them, to understand them, to overcome them, and to abandon them eventually. So that one you will have to figure out what you're dealing with and how you can, get the stuff you need to clean up whichever spot it is, whatever it was. If it's a wine spot, sorry, we're Buddhists, so we shouldn't be drinking. But if you happen, or no, let's put it the other way. You're at a work meeting and they're having alcohol and they pour it over you. So you weren't drinking it, okay? So then you have to know. And apparently, what is it? Salt? Or something. There is these kind of ways and means to, clean certain spots. So you have to find the right agent to clean whichever defilement is arising in your heart. And if it's desire, it's different from sadness or from depression or from self-loathing or hate or whatever it might be. I just don't know. Anyway, and Bhante Cunda has probably some more ways and means.
I don't know. You see, I try and keep my mind not too, would say, too negative, if possible. This is from a monastic view. So I find that if I stay away from the office and the internet, then I become more positive. Because sometimes there's so much stuff online these days, and sometimes it could be workplace, could be spending too much time on the internet. It does bring a lot of busyness and problem solving in the mind. If I'm by myself in the forest with the kangaroos and the birds and watching the flowers and the plants grow, it leads to a lot of peace and happiness. And so if as monastic, usually we have to give counseling to people. That's good. Sometimes you can listen to their problems and give the best advice. But usually we're just as as an advisor. But sometimes I notice, sometimes if we go to a work environment where it's very busy, then it can say, in the monastery it's never perfect because there's so many junior monks, there's so many projects happening, and sometimes a lot of people have many ideas of doing things. So you see, my job is, okay, if they have a job, let them do it. I stick to my project. And sometimes if people want to come in and want to tell me how to fix the car, I go, please fix the car. I go back to my kuti. So I find that if we get involved with too many different people and partners, then it can be very complex. So that's one way of me getting not too involved with people's ideas, because the ideas of people's mind is endless. And we do also teach in the prison system, so the monastic. So the prisoners say that when they come for the meditation class, or they come to work in the monastery, they feel happy, they feel very at ease, and they feel very respected and cared for. Sometimes when the prisoners are coming, they work in the prison, the monks are very kind to them and very respectful, and they join us for lunch, and the lay people are very kind to see that they're from the prison system and they come here to help the monastery. So they treat it with kindness and respect, and they basically uplift their heart. But sometimes if they send back to maximum discreetly, because they might have do a parole, and if the parole is not approved, they're sent to maximum discreetly, where it's so tense and they're on the edge all the time. So sometimes when you're in the prison system, you're associating with people that is really angry and are really suffering, and that can basically rob them into if you're there, and it can be so intense and overwhelming. So that's the feedback we get from our practitioner that we come and visit in the prison system. So sometimes people will hang around to affect us. That's why we should hang around people that keeps the 5 precepts, that are kind and developing the heart and the mind. Because those qualities we see in them, we grow in our heart too. That's why when we when we go to Thailand to see the elders or the very developed monastic that are rumored to be very developed, when you're just in the present with them, you can feel the metal, the kindness, and the wisdom. It's like so overpowering. You go, wow, that's amazing. So when you see a being that have developed their mind to a high state, you realize, wow, this is something very special. So who we hang around does affect us. Because the Buddhists, one of the devas, they asked the Buddha, what's the highest blessing? They didn't say read the suttas or make merit and stuff. They say associate with the wise. Avoid the fools, because that will bring a lot of happiness and that will uplift your heart. So that's why I hang around Venerable Bodhidhaja. I listen to all his great servants.
Sure.
No.
I'm just quoting the Buddha.
we support one another. Yes, and when you have two monastic, we tend to look after one another, especially when we're traveling to many different places. Sometimes we have two monastic, it's great. We have to support one another, and we keep our precept well. It's when the Buddhist society here and the Buddhist society in Western Australia and all different society members around the world, when we went traveling to India, it was great. And really enjoy our time because we go to the 4 holy places, and there was about, I think, 7 Sangha. 7 Sangha. It was great because when you associate with good people, it uplifts your heart. And you actually support one another in our practice. So it makes a really pleasant time to basically go on pilgrimage together. So associate with people and don't listen to too much or watch too much junk news because that is people's problem and defilements. Yes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So that's a different kind of skillful means. And as you were talking, my mind was working on the simile that I was using before. So to avoid places that are dangerous, yes. So if you know there's ketchup around and wine being splashed all over the place, don't go there. If you have no choice, protect yourself. If you are a cook, you wear an apron. You don't let it get into your heart and mess with your own heart. Take away your own happiness. You go in, life is messy sometimes. All the mess goes on the apron goes straight into the washing machine, and you go home pure. Or as pure as you came, or maybe hopefully purer. So that's important. So when we understand where the danger is, where the problem is, don't expose yourself to it. When you understand where the purity is and where the things are that you want to, let them sink in. So when you go to the beach and you want to get a tan, you take your clothes off. So you actually get it on your skin. So the good stuff, let it in. Let it inform you. Let it soak into your heart and into your mind. But be wise. Understand what is skillful. Understand what is not skillful. And then act accordingly. Yes. So there's so many different skillful means. But anyway, I think we should be doing announcements already, is it? What do you want to do? Let's do that maybe. Is that okay?
Yeah.
You can never answer all the questions.
Thanks so much, Bhante, for the insightful talk and the beautiful sutra. Now I pass on to Indian for the announcement.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bhantes, for the beautiful talk today and for yesterday's meditation retreat, which everybody has started commenting on.
Okay, very good. So tomorrow I'll give the stage to Bhante Cunda. He'll be sitting here and he'll be guiding the meditation.
Guided meditation.
So if you want to come, there's one more to come.
Yeah, and maybe you can make another visit again. Just a second. So the committee is not here today because they are conducting a workshop in Newbury. So if there's anything, you can come and see me or someone who has been in the committee before. First of all, I would like to mention that our June lunch dana roster at Newbury and the Buddhist Society, the Buddhaloka Center, we need some supporters to offer lunch dana. So if you are able to assist, please go to the website, our BSU website, and you can either go to the Newbury Monastery tab or the Buddhaloka tab and navigate to the Dana page. Or you could also call the office during office hours, which is Monday to Friday, 9:30 to 1:30 p.m. And today we have the monthly lay Sutta discussion led by Dr. Jaya and Satish Vimalajiva. It will be in the library from 12:30 to 1:30. And we do have the upcoming events. We have a SOS a retreat at the 3-day retreat at the SOS, which is done by Bhante Bodhidhaja and Bhante Cunda. It's from the 6th of June to the 9th of June, which we have been booked out, but there is a wait list, so you can go and put in your name as waitlisted. And there's another retreat. Ajahn Nisarano is holding the last retreat before the Vassa, which is from the 4th of July to the 6th of July. It's on our meditation palette, knowing what the mind needs. That's the topic of the retreat, and bookings are now open. So there's another notice about a day meditation program on the 14th of June, led by Venerable Jinalankar, who was here sometime a few years ago. He was here, who is residing currently in Wellington, and more details will come in the newsletter. And the usual program, Monday night, tomorrow you will be doing the meditation program, the 7:30, Bhante Cunda and Bhante Bodhidhaja. Tuesday night there's a lay retreat, layperson led meditation from 7:30, which is led by Sandeep. And Monday to Friday nights at 7 p.m. Melbourne time, we have the online Make Meditation a Healthy Habit program. Then New Day, New Mind, daily meditation group that you can join anytime between 4 to 6:30 a.m. on Melbourne on Discord. The times are Melbourne times. Next week it will be when Ajahn Aranavihari, who is giving the Dhamma talk, and the Monday night meditation. That's all for the announcements, and thank you so much. Please join us for the lunch time.
Wonderful, yes, I just wanted to mention, so there'll be communal lunch next door, and we usually stick around, so if you have any more questions or want to have a chat, we should have a little bit of time, but we have to be here at 12:30. There is another program for us.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
And Bhantes, we would like to see you again sometime in the future.
You tune into YouTube. No, we'll see what we can do. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for your invitation. It's very kind of you. Okay, that's it. Do we pay respects together, or yeah, let's do that. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivadi Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho